defense is impregnable, and I'm just ferocious. I want your heart. I want to eat your children.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to episode 9 of the No Bros All Manos podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Phoebus, and welcome back. We got a little bit to talk about today. We're going to talk UFC Fight Night, Strickland versus Cannonier, and then we're going to talk the 2-3 fights off the main card, and then we're also going to close out the show with 3 questions that I think kind of inculminate all of 2022, and just questions I want to leave you guys. So make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe to the video. Leave a comment down below. Everything helps. So let's jump right into it. We had UFC Fight Night, Jared Cannonier versus Sean Strickland. This went down at the UFC Apex on last Saturday night. And in your main event, Jared Cannonier gets the split decision victory over Sean Strickland. Now, what do we think about the fight? I think Cannonier had a much higher output than in his previous fights. Bringing the fight to Sean Strickland was one of his keys to victory. Credit to Sean Strickland. He stood in the pocket, which is on brand, and he threw straight punches. They were not loops. They were just right down the pipe. His jab looked good. His slips were good. The footwork looked good, circling away from the power hand of Cannonier. But I just believe that Cannonier just landed cleaner and with more power over the course of the 5-round fight. I think he mixed up the attack better, using all 4 limbs, both kicks and punches, versus Sean Strickland, who relied mostly on his boxing skill and pedigree. But don't get me wrong, this was a close fight. Each round was close, but I just think Cannonier landed cleaner, looked busier, and had more ring generalship overall throughout the fight. Now, what does this fight do for Cannonier? I believe this fight puts him right back in the top contendership. I think he's one fight win away from a title shot. Now, the UFC could give him Alex Pereira next in 2023, but I don't think that they will do that. I think that that's just kind of rushing Cannonier to the top a little bit too quickly for that title shot. I think they see that they have better matchups they could make as far as money-wise and as far as just overall quality of the fight-wise immediately. I tend to think that the UFC will match up Rodder Whittaker with Costa, or maybe they will give Cannonier that title shot. I don't know. We'll see. But this type of performance is what you needed to see out of Jared Cannonier. At 38. If he's going to make one last good strong push to the title, he's got fast hands, power in each of them. His leg kicks are also vicious. I mean, dude, those legs are damn tree trunks. He's got decent takedown defense. But, it would be interesting to see him in a rematch with Robert Whittaker. I think that that's a fight that they should make, honestly. If they're not going to do this Paulo Costa versus Robert Whittaker matchup, then I think Cannonier versus Whittaker is a great matchup in the interim time. My final question for Cannonier is, what do I think that he needs to add or tweak, that would, level up his game, or he would take the next step to being at that championship caliber fighter. And I think, it's a good single or double leg takedown. When you watch Sean Strickland fight, he tends to stand straight up and down. There's no bend in the knee. There's no real lightness on the feet. It's more so march forward, check a leg kick every now and then when they're thrown. So Sean Strickland stands straight up and down, and there's really no bend in the knee, which leaves him open to takedowns. And it was honestly surprising to me that Jared Cannonier did not take more advantage of trying to strike his way into a takedown against Sean Strickland. But where does Sean Strickland need to do? And like I said earlier, I don't think he did terrible. His jab was pumping. He was landing clean. He landed super clean a few times, but he was not doing well fighting off the back foot, which is what we saw Pereira do to him, who put him on his back foot and then eventually hit him with the flying knee, and it KO'd him. We did not see Sean Strickland fighting off the back foot against Cannonier very well. Every time he'd get back up, he would have to circle off, and he would eat some big shots, and it just did not look good for him. But, the boxing is good. The footwork is good for his style. His striking defense is good. Not great, by virtue of just, how he fights in relation into spacing between him and his opponent, because he just stands so close. He just stands always in range, and it just seems somehow he does get hit clean, but he does also, slip a lot of those shots, or they just don't land cleanly on him. And I think it's just by virtue of just how he spars in practice constantly, and he's just comfortable fighting at that range. I think he just needs to, Sean Strickland just needs to clean some things up. I don't think he's got a terrible game. He just needs to clean some things up. I think a dope fight for him in the return in 2023 would be against Chris Curtis, who's coming off that KO win over Joaquin Buckley. Chris Curtis sits at 14 right now, but I think that it would just be a great stylistic fight, just a banger. Two guys that like to stand and strike, and, who's going to bend the knee first. But yeah, great fight overall between Night Cannonier and Sean Strickland. But let's talk about the judging on this one. It went to a split decision, like I said. Two judges gave it 49-46 for Cannonier, and then one judge gave it 49-46 for Strickland. Now, I agree with the 49-46 for Cannonier, but I just don't see how you can give Sean Strickland 4 of the 5 rounds. I think at best you could make a case for 48-47 Strickland, and even that's a little bit of a stretch because Cannonier honestly won those rounds pretty cleanly. They were close, but it seemed pretty clear to me that Cannonier won the majority of the rounds. Interesting that the judges who did score for Cannonier, they had different scores on rounds 3 and 4, which is where they diverted. Two judges scored it 10-9, 10-9, round 1 and 2. One judge scored it 10-9 in round 3 for Cannonier, and then opposite 10-9 for Strickland, and then obviously, like I said, opposite rounds 3 and 4 were different. I had rounds 1, 2, 4, and 5 for Cannonier. In round 3 for Strickland, respectively. When we look at the Fight Metric stats, it's really kind of interesting. Fight Metric has it 141 of 310 total strikes for Cannonier, and then 152 out of 400 for Strickland. And this is in the significant strike total, giving us a 48 and 38% accuracy, respectively. Only one takedown credit to Strickland, and that was in the first round for the 48 seconds of control time. He didn't really do much with that. There was no ground and pound landed. And as far as targeting, like I said, Cannonier, he went all over the place. I think he used all 4 limbs way better in this fight, was just more diverse with the attack, and you could see this in the numbers. He was 24 of 35 to the leg versus Sean Strickland, 2 of 3. Only 32 body shots for Strickland total versus Cannonier 88 times to the body. Strickland had 365 total head strikes thrown in, 187 by Cannonier. So yeah, like you can see the variation of Cannonier played a huge factor, and it's just interesting to see these numbers back it up. But it just goes to show you that to win fights you need to not always head hunt. You've got to chop the legs with the leg kicks. You've got to go to the body. You want to mix in all these versatile attacks and diverse array of strikes, because it will slow you down. It will cause more damage if you are able to land more effectively across the full array of striking techniques, as opposed to just headhunting. Sure, headhunting will more likely to get you the knockout, but when you're able to slow your opponent down with leg kicks, when you're able to dig from the gas tank with body shots, and then you're able to close to the head, you could end up knocking somebody out easier because they don't move as fast. They're breathing harder, and their head isn't moving as much. So I just think that, you really need to utilize all 3. And Sean Strickland clearly did not use as many leg kicks as he definitely should have. I mean, only three attempted. It's not a very good number. You want to see that number go up. But where the numbers don't tell the story in this fight is in strikes landed per round. Now, Sean Strickland threw more strikes than Cannonier in the fight and in every round. But the quality of shots landed by Cannonier were bigger. I think they had more damage applied to them. And I think that's why we saw Cannonier come away with the victory. Again, great fight by both men. Congrats to Cannonier, and good showing to Sean Strickland. But let's jump into the next fight that we're going to talk about. We had Arman Tsaryukan. He took on Damir Ismagulov. And Arman Tsaryukan defeats Damir Ismagulov via unanimous decision 30-27 on all 3 judges' scorecards. What can we say? Arman Tsaryukan is very good. I think that that's clear now. His takedowns, they're excellent. He used different finishes and different entries on almost every single one of his takedowns. Catch a single leg, run the pipe. Double leg, cut the corner. I mean, it was just beautiful stuff. Very, very versatile takedown entry and finish, which is what I think will separate his wrestling game from the pack. Excuse me. His kicks were excellent. Very fast, good mixing of targets. The left leg was pumping out there. That front leg kick was super fast, very accurate, almost landed flush a few times. He used his kicks to set up entries for takedowns, but also to finish his combinations, which is, it's showing progression in his striking. It's getting better and better each fight throughout his career. I just wish, if I saw one thing that I wanted to improve, I wish I would have saw more ground and pound out of him once he secured these takedowns. It was clear he's like glue once he gets you down to the ground. I mean, he was just all over Damir Ismagulov. I mean, credit to Damir Ismagulov because once, Tsarukyan would take him down, he was quick to pop back up, right back up to his feet, use the fence, use his hands. I mean, just by any means necessary, back up to his feet. But when over the course of, 10, 15 minutes, standing back up and then quickly getting dumped back down to your feet and standing back up, that adds up. Having done it before in wrestling, you get tired way quicker being that guy on bottom than you do being the guy picking him up and returning him down to the mat. And, it was credit to Damir for popping back up, but eventually it wore him down. And, Arman was just able to ride it, just take control. But I think the biggest takeaway is that, Arman, he has great control, great flow wrestling, but he just needs to add some viciousness, some damage infliction from that top position. His ground and pound was just not very existent. And when he's able to control an opponent so much, you would love to see some damage just being inflicted. He wasn't too much of a submission threat either. I think that he does have that as part of his game, but, he just really wasn't threatening for a submission either. But I think that that's not necessarily the true testament of his game. I really think that he is more of a ground and pound kind of guy when it comes down to it. And I think that it would just be more effective for his style of wrestling. I just want the other thing I want to see him work on, is developing a game plan B. He relies so much on the wrestling, and his wrestling is at such a high level that I think that it would really suit him well to develop that game plan B. Now, whether this is through, I think this would best come through striking. Learning to put the combinations just better together a little bit, just learning, just some range presence, some range adjustments, and I think that adding that game plan B would just really set him apart. If that wrestling just isn't necessarily working over 5 rounds, what do you have, and what other threats do you present to your opponent that can alter the path of the fight or inflict damage into your opponent? And I think, with more striking, I think he would just really elevate and take that next step to where I think, I think he can go. His ceiling is so high. But let's not pass up on Damir Ismagulov. I mean, you cannot judge him solely from this performance. Go back and watch his previous fights. He's extremely hard to take down in general. Entering this fight, he had a 90-plus takedown defense. And, I would say his striking overall is better than Arman's. Maybe not as fast, but, I think he just has a wider arsenal of attacks he can pull from. I mean, he's fought against good competition as well. Kudzeladze, Thiago Moises, Alex Gorgies, all wins. Excuse me. He had one similar opponent with Tsarukyan and Joel Alvarez, but they both got the win. Tsarukyan ended up getting a finish, though. But that one was a little bit further back for Ismagulov. But Damir is a good fighter. I don't want people to think that, the way Arman made him look, he's a bad fighter. He's not. He's a very, very good fighter. Arman is just made him look average, though, in this fight. And if you don't know who Arman Tsaryukan is by now, you should. 23, he made his debut against Islam Makhachev. He lost, but he gave Islam arguably his toughest fight to date. Bounced back and rallied out wins over the now PFL champ Olivio Abin or AOM, Davi Ramos, the Steamroller Favola, Giagos, and then, like I said, Alvarez. He dropped that close one to Gamrot. Could have gone either way, but now he bounces back with this win and gets a win over Damir Ismagulov. I mean, this kid has got championship potential all over it. That run of fights that, he entered the UFC in, it's about as tough as you're going to see. And I think with his level of wrestling, if he just added some viciousness to it, that ground and pound, and just added a little bit more depth to his striking game, I think we'll see him fighting for a belt quicker than you honestly would really like to, when you honestly realize. And after the fight, he called out some of these top 5 guys, wanting them. I would honestly slow the roll a little bit on that. Let's just calm down. Like I said, I want to see a little bit more rounded out in the striking. I think that the wrestling is for sure there. Just want a little bit more in the striking and a little bit more ground and pound, and I think he'll be ready for that top 5 guy coming soon to you in 2023. The last fight we're going to talk about is Drew Dober versus Bobby Green. And Drew Dober gets it done with a round 2 knockout over Bobby Green. And what can we say about this fight? Man, Bobby Green was winning this fight up until that knockout happened. His striking just looked excellent. His hands were fast. He was using his patent shoulder rolls, the trunk movement. He just never got hit too clean until he got hit clean. He hit Drew a few times with a few super crisp shots that landed effectively, and he overall, Bobby Green looked good until he didn't. And as for Drew Dober, man, what a dog. He had a lot of clean shots, but he also delivered a few of his own, as we can see. The KO, he ate a few of Bobby Green's shots coming in and just stood in the pocket and just delivered back and landed that right hand from hell and just shut the lights off on Bobby Green in the second round. Great win by Drew Dober. I think this win shows that, he can still make a push up through these rankings a little bit if he keeps racking up wins like this. I mean, that's 3 fights, 3 finishes. He's got power. The chin's good. He's got heart. He's got pretty good kickboxing. Not great, but good. He's got good takedowns, good control from the top. This is easily the best win of his UFC career. He stumbled against those top guys like Islam and Dariush. And he suffered that weird tough split decision loss to Brad Riddell. But, he's looked great as of late. And, I'm really interested to see where he ends up in 2023. Just looking at the rankings, I would love to see him against Grant Dawson. I think that's a perfect opponent for him next. Grant's at, I think, 14 or 15. Great opponent, great matchup, And as for Bobby Green, I think his stock is still good, man. I don't think it dropped terribly. He looked great in this fight. He did not look bad. It was an entertaining fight. He didn't get hit clean until he got knocked out. It was a good fight. Good fight. I mean, Bobby has that style of fighting that fans like to see and enjoy to watch. He's all action. He wants to hit you. He wants to be in a fight. He's constantly standing in the pocket. Uses the shoulder rolls, so it looks like he's always getting hit clean, but he's not always. He'll bounce back big in 2023. I have zero doubt for him. It just happens. Sometimes you get caught, and that's what happened. Drew Dober gets it done. One last side note, though, about the pre-fight rant at the pre-fight presser by Bobby Green. He was talking about Islam and how he steroids his whole life, and it's just rather rich coming from somebody who just got popped for, what is this, androsterone back in October. Just a little ironic, kind of the pot calling the kettle black there. Also, Islam, he popped for a prescribed medicine following a heart surgery, and his whole little statement just sounds like conjecture and excuses as to why he lost to why he lost to the champion. Next. All right. When we think about this year in MMA and the UFC and just, the overall combat sports, there was all kinds of fights. We had good fights. We had bad fights, a la Carla and Rose too. And, we had upsets and unexpected and expected outcomes in fights. We had knockouts and submissions. We saw it all this year. saw new faces emerge and put their respective weight classes on notice that they're coming up. Guys like Shavkat Rakhmonov and Ila Topuria. We saw fighters make career resurgences like Jeff Neal and Chito Vera. We saw legends hang it up and, say goodbye to the sport, like Frankie Edgar and Donald Cerrone and Joanna Jędrzejczyk. We saw champions defend, champions regain, and new champions be crowned, like Aljo and Zhang Weili and Yuri Prochazka. But which single win in the over 500 fights this year was the most significant? Which fight had the highest stakes, the most drama, and captivated the fight fans around the world for 25 minutes or less? There was a few fights this year that stand out, that come to mind as the big ones. Amanda Nunes coming back after the loss to Juliana Pena and dominating her for all 5 rounds in their rematch in July. Coming back, regaining the belt. That was a great comeback performance. We also had Alex Pereira and Leon Edwards knocking out their opponent in round 5 in upset fashion in fights that both of them were arguably losing. We had Islam Makhachev fulfilling Father Plan and winning the lightweight belt over arguably the best lightweight of all time in Charles Oliveira. That one also comes to mind. Lots of great fights, great big huge wins for everybody all across the year. But the single greatest win of the year for me came on July 2nd of this year when Alexander Volkanovski defeated Max Holloway in the 5-round trilogy with the most decisive win of the trilogy. That night, Volk put a stamp on it, and he showed that he is clear and away the best featherweight in the world. Max Holloway had no answer for the Aussie as he got pieced up for all 5 rounds of that fight, ending in a unanimous decision victory for Volkanovski, 50-45 on all 3 judges' scorecards. This is the biggest win of the year because of what it meant for the division. We knew Volk and Max were clearly the 2 best featherweights in the world, and with this performance, we saw Volk had then put a gap between him and Max. We always knew that Max and Volk were up here where the rest of the division was always around down here, and now it appears that Volk has now taken him from where they were about here, where Volk was a little bit there, but now it's there. Volk really showed something in this fight. It showed. After the first 2 fights, they were a little controversial. Some people saying that Max won that fight, but Max was coming off of the most dominant decision victory of all time in that win over Calvin Kattar and a great win over Yair Rodriguez, all building up to this trilogy. And Volk answers by going out there and pitching a shutout. This fight just had everything, man. It had the drama of, just the 2 guys that you knew that were the best finally closing the show. And this one had no controversy. This one was clean. This one was clear. This one was definitive. Alexander Volkanovski destroyed Max Holloway that night and really put a close to the show for a potential even 4th match between them. Just the single biggest win, the single most important win, the single most defining win of the year. Alexander Volkanovski defeating Max Holloway by unanimous decision. The next thing I want to talk about is what fight do we all wish that we got this year but we didn't get? We saw a lot of good matchmaking this year as per usual in the UFC, man. I mean, there's never a layup. There's no gimmies for anyone. We saw the fights we needed to see and wanted to see. We got Charles versus Islam. We got Colby Covington versus Masvidal. We got Aljo versus Yan Tu. We even got some fights that we didn't even expect. We got Hamza Chimaev versus Kevin Holland on a last-minute fight card change. We got Petr Yan versus Sean O'Malley, which was a huge ranking gap disparity. But, of course, we didn't get some of those fights, and we wish that we had gotten some of them. The one that I wish that we would have definitely gotten this year, I mean, I think it's kind of obvious, and this may be a little bit of the cheap answer, but it's pretty clear. John Jones versus Francis Ngannou. This is the fight to make. The UFC has to make this one in 2023. What do we say about this fight, though? I mean, you don't know how this one's going to turn out. John Jones has been off for over 2 years. We've seen thousands of videos. We've seen all these videos of John lifting and putting on all this legit heavyweight heavyweight body. And as for Francis, we saw him defeat Tsarukyan using his wrestling for the last 3 rounds to retain the belt. Just what is going to happen? We all want to know. Will John's speed hold up? Can he withstand the power of Francis? Can Francis handle John Jones's wrestling? Can John Jones handle the wrestling of Francis Ngannou? Will John's gas tank hold up with all this added muscle? Will we see flashes of that young John Jones that opened up his title fight with Shogun Rule with a flying knee? We just don't know what is going to happen. I would like to think that John Jones would go out there and, beat up on Francis Ngannou and just look like the world beater that he always was. And, but I would also love to see if Francis just went out there and just threw that missile of a right hand and just knocked John Jones into the next stratosphere. I don't know what's going to happen. It is such an intriguing matchup. I mean, John's been off for so long. He's been dealing with these demons of outside the MMA world, family issues and all these other issues. But he's always stayed relevant. We've just been waiting for him to come back. And the fight with Francis has got to be done in 2023. I mean, just think about the implications, If John Jones is able to go out there, beat Francis, and, cement himself as the certified, bona fide, probably will never be glorified enough GOAT of MMA if he went out there and beat Francis. And on the flip side, if Francis went out there and beat John Jones, I think it would just, be another notch, be another step towards being the greatest heavyweight champion of all time. There's just so many questions with this fight. So much drama, so much gravity. And, we didn't get it 2022, but we definitely have to get it for 2023. Now, does it sell 2 million pay-per-views? Probably not, but I could easily sell this at like over 1 million, 1 million, 1.5, somewhere in that range, especially if they put another title fight on there and really give some oomph to this card. Just please, UFC, Dana White, Sean Shelby, Mick Maynard, make this fight happen. John Jones versus Francis Ngannou, 2023, for the heavyweight strap, sorry. Make it happen, UFC. Make it happen. The final thing I want to talk about is which champion going into 2023 will lose the belt. And, we saw the belt change hands 8 times in 19 title fights in 2022. Izzy Adesanya, by measures, led all fighters with 3 title fights in 2022, finishing with a 2-1 record, obviously closing out the year on that loss to Alex Pereira. 3 fighters lost in their first title defenses of this year. Glover Teixeira, Juliana Pena, and Carla Esparza. I know it's not her first title defense ever, but first of this year. We saw 10 decisions and 9 finishes, 4 submissions and 5 KOs respectively in 2022 title fights. When we look at the list of current champions, it is highly unlikely that each champion will remain champion or be champion on this day in 2023. But which champion will continue to go on a title reign? Will there be a double champ? But who is going to lose? Who is going to lose? And if I had to pick one, I'm picking Leon Edwards. Now, before I go into why, let me just be very clear. Leon Edwards is a very deserving and legitimate champion. His 5th round knockout of at the time pound for pound number 1 Kamaru Usman, it's up there for KO of the year. He's a very well-rounded fighter. Striking is great. Grappling is pretty dang good. He's got the mindset when he locks in and focuses that he can beat anybody in the world. He's on a 9-fight win streak, and he's just looking better than he ever has in his career since his first loss to Kamaru. That was his last loss, was to Kamaru Usman, and now he's a champion. But personally, I just think that the Sharks coming up, and there's boogeymen in the shadows in this welterweight divisions that have the skills and mindsets befitting of becoming champions in 2023. Just thinking of the potential matchups in this division for Leon Edwards, there's just not many that are good for him. Going down, the Kamaru rematch, Kamaru Usman won 19 minutes of that fight. He lost the first round, but then he was winning every other minute of that fight until he got KO'd. Colby Covington, he's there at number 2. he has the ability which few other fighters do, which is weaponized pace, the constant pressure, the grappling. His striking's improved, as we saw in his last fight with Kamaru Usman. He's constantly touching you, threatening for chokes, and he's just a handful for anyone. Khamzat sitting there at 3. I mean, he's just been terrorizing this division. You know, elite wrestling, steel chin. He's got the charisma, the personality. You know, he's a problem, obviously. Bilal Muhammad, he's just been foaming at the mouth for this rematch ever since their no contest back in March of 2021 because of the eye poke. You know, he looked fantastic in his last win over Sean Brady, outstriking it in what we thought would be a grappling affair, and he just went out there and outstruck him. And, you know, he's training with Habib and them boys now, and he's looking better than ever. He's a problem. Gilbert Burns, number there at number 5, best BJJ in the division. Wonder Boy sitting at number 6. I mean, I would probably favor Leon, but I mean, it's just a crazy cool fight for Wonder Boy. You know, the 2 strikers that I think it would just be an awesome fight. And then you have Jeff Neal at number 7, but he's set to take on number 10 Shavkat Rakhmonov in the co-main event on January 14th of next year on the first fight card of the year. And, you know, Jeff Neal, he's looking like a brand new guy. Striking looked awesome. He pieced up Vicente Luque. But he's taking on Shavkat Rakhmonov, who I think is the boogeyman in the division, and will be auditing a fighter near you in the very near future. Just a complete fighter out of Kazakhstan, 16-0 with a 100% finish rate. He's another guy. He's ranked number 10. You know, and the key thing is about all these guys is that most of them, their backgrounds are in grappling. Now, Leon Edwards does have decent grappling. It's not bad. It's not bad by any means. But I just, you know, when we saw Leon fight Kamaru in their last fight, he got beat up in the grappling in 3.5 rounds. You know, and then combined with the fact that not all the fighters that I mentioned, they all have different styles of wrestling. You know, Gilbert Burns, like I said, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Khamzat and Colby, they both use freestyle wrestling takedowns, but then folk-style wrist rides from the back, using opposite wrist control and constantly floating from side to side. Shavkat, he likes to use trips and body locks, and then he'll stand on top of you, never committing fully to his knees to the ground, and land just heavy ground and pound. This division just has too many dangerous matchups for the current champion, Leon Edwards, you know. And I would not be surprised if I saw him lose his belt in 2023. But that's going to do it, guys. Make sure you like, share, subscribe to the video. Leave a comment. Let me know who you think had the biggest win of the year. Let me know who you think is going to lose the belt in 2023. And what other fight do you have to see in 2023 going forward? Let me know. Leave it down in the comments. Everything helps. But that's going to do it, guys. I will catch you next time. We'll probably do an episode next week or the week after. We're going to wrap up 2022 with our end-of-the-year awards. Stay tuned for that, and I will see you then. Peace.